Today we're going to finish up the Cold War. We're going to look at the post-war America, okay? So if you'll turn in your notes to 9.2, and we'll go ahead and get started with this. And you'll notice I have the McDonald's here. This is really where a lot of our modern culture kind of coalesces into something we're more familiar with, okay? So the first thing I want to start with is suburbanization. Now, suburbs had existed in the United States. You can go back to post-World War I, where we really see some of the first suburbs in the U.S. But when we really see this massive suburbanization is post-World War II. And there's several reasons for that. One is all of those returning veterans have you've got the GI Bill, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, and it's going to give them jobs. Unlike World War I, they come back, they're not going to be jobless. They're going to be given job priority. They're going to be having money for education. It's easy to get a loan for educational purposes, loans for purchasing homes and property, and they can move out. They can move out. You can also buy a car, and you can commute to the city for work, or to go to a ball game, or to go to a movie, or something like that. So really, that GI Bill, that Servicemen's Readjustment Act, is going to allow them to move out, just because it's going to help provide them with the funds they need. But you also have the interstate system too, and that's going to be created with the Federal Defense Highway Act. You'll notice how our interstate is part of a defense movement, and really, if you think, ooh, I'm trying to get it kind of smaller. These are interstates now. This is the early interstate system. There's a lot more interstates here today. Why do we need interstates? Well, think about how easy it would be to get our personnel and our material across the country if needed, and not having to rely on railroads too. So, but in addition to a military purpose, it also has, of course, a civilian purpose, and it's going to make getting into the suburbs a whole lot easier. Okay, so it's just easier to commute to work with the interstate system, okay? And, of course, like I said, the improved roads would allow military troops and personnel to move quicker, and also evacuating cities in case of a nuclear war. So it all kind of works in there together. The baby boom also. You got all these people coming back after the war. You think about now the baby. I'm going to kind of take a break here and just talk about the baby boom in general for a second. Beginning in the 20s, late 20s, with the Great Depression, so many people had put off marriage, having kids, having anything, or they had grown up during the Depression and just very poor, and so you just don't have anything. And then we move right from the Depression into World War II, and you have the rationing, and you have people going off to war, and you have everybody, this all-in effort to defeat the Nazis and to defeat the Japanese. And so you have the years of the Great Depression, the years of World War II, and these were years of doing without. These were years of sacrifice. And so the war ends, and you've got returning soldiers, and they're going to get married, and they're going to start to have babies, and they're going to start having a lot of them. And because of all of the delay, you've just got this gigantic baby boom that's going to start occurring. Now, this baby boom goes from about 1945 to about 1965. And there's a little bit of give in those years, but that's pretty much the generation that we're talking about here. And they're going to contribute to just about everything. I mean, if you can look at it at the end of the day, you go back and you say, oh, well, we have all these kids, and we have all of this, and we need more stuff for this. How is suburbanization affected by the baby boom? Well, we got new growing families, and we want a place for them, growing families, and so let's move out. We'll have a yard. Everybody will have their own bedroom, and so you kind of have that idea, plus the fact that, again, like I said, they had done without for so long. But parents wanted homes to accommodate those growing families, and so that's how the baby boom is going to affect suburbanization. Also, You're going to begin to have a lot of fast food restaurants. There's your interstate system, an early system. So it's kind of interesting. So my first question for 9.2, my first question here is, what made suburbanization possible? Just write down a quick sentence. What all made suburbanization possible? Education is another one that's a pretty big thing. Prior to World War II, education was something that you went, you did, then you got a job, and you're okay. But it's going to be a little different now. First of all, the GI Bill, again, the same bill that allowed returning veterans to buy houses or start businesses, is going to allow them to enroll in colleges and universities or in vocation schools, despite their social class. You no longer need to be upper middle class to wealthy to upper class people to go to college. You could be just a returning veteran and you have that in. And so as the U.S. population became more educated and the middle class grew, because of those jobs, those degrees translate into great jobs, and that great job translates into more money. More money means that you can buy a better house and you can buy more stuff, and you can see this prosperity that comes about because of the increase in education. So since you've got better paying jobs because of your education, that means more parents are able to send their kids to college as well. So what you begin to see in the 50s and 60s is getting a college education becomes the norm among the middle class citizens. Okay, this is something that is expected. That is not to say that everybody goes, but I'm just saying that it becomes more of a norm for everybody. The exception to that is going to be African Americans, mostly because most colleges are still segregated, and you only have a few black colleges and universities. Okay, so in addition to the lack of schools, you also see the lack of formal education prior to World War II, prior to them entering the service. So blacks are not going to benefit as much from the GI Bill as whites. You're going to see a kind of a turnaround also in the quality of education because of an event that happens not here but in the Soviet Union, and that is in 1957, the launch of Sputnik. They're going to launch let's see if do I have a picture of it? I do. They're going to launch a satellite into space. Now, it's probably about the size of a beach ball. It has 3 antennae in it. And they're going to launch a satellite into space. What does that mean for us? Well, one thing, it doesn't mean anything to us initially. It doesn't have a bomb or anything. They just launched it into space. Why do we care? Because this is going to totally change our education system. Why do we care? Because I just mentioned it, really, it doesn't have a bomb on it, but what if it did? Because now they can get something out of our atmosphere, and possibly if you can get it up out of our atmosphere, you can send a bomb around the world. So it's kind of the precursor to, I guess, ICBMs, if you want to look at it that way. So it's launched in 1957. And in 1958, Congress is going to pass the National Defense Education Act, Education and Defense, to make sure that because we didn't feel like we were ever going to be able to catch up with this. Oh my gosh, how could the Soviets, we're smarter than they are. We have better stuff than they do. We're able to do so many better things than they can. How could they beat us at that? Oh no, it's because our education system is so bad. Our kids only care about buying a bike or a cap gun or playing cowboys and Indians, or they don't care about what they should care about to put us ahead. And so that National Defense Education Act is going to boost our science, math, and foreign language departments. And we really do need to counteract that fear that consumerism has made us less competitive and really weak, and less likely to win the space race. Also, you can add to the fact that we have, again, that baby boom, is the fact that we have so many more kids than we used to, okay? And so where we used to have small schools, small class sizes, now we've got big class sizes, but let's go back and, oh gosh, it keeps doing this. Let me go back. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Go back to what we were looking at. I'm going too quick is what's happening, and I apologize. I'm trying to get to the picture of here. Look at all of that. First of all, you probably need to build a school. That's a lot of people. So what you're looking at is a lot of kids coming through these schools, okay? So you're going to put a big strain on our education system, okay? And so you need to build schools, okay? A lot of new schools. With a lot of new schools, you need a lot of new teachers, okay? So now we need teacher training programs. So you can see a lot of where our problems are coming in. And you can see the root of a lot of our education problems in what we're looking at here, okay? Has the United States, because the fear was that we were becoming a consumer culture, we're so wrapped up in consumerism, and was that true? And the truth is, yeah, it was. Remember, one of the problems that led to the Great Depression was the problem of buying on credit, installment buying in the 1920s. Well, we've moved to the next phase, and we don't use installment programs anymore, plans anymore, so much as a credit card. First credit card is invented in 1955. It was a Diners Club card. And from there, we're going to go to what we have today. But it allows, y'all know how credit works. I don't need to have the money. I just have to have plastic, and I have to repay it, yes, with interest, but it allows me to kind of rack up debt without realizing what I'm doing. Also, the fact that shopping malls are going to pop up across the country. If people are buying, let's have a place for them to go and to sell it at, okay? And Americans have more money. It's not just because of credit, but jobs are everywhere after the war. And our production is up, jobs are up, money is to be had everywhere. And everybody wanted stuff because of all that rationing. And so now we have the credit cards to do it. Not everybody had credit cards, but you see what I'm saying. And it's just amazing the kind of things they sold. This might be my favorite. You think about our safety seats for kids today. This was a car bed for babies anyway. But you have just stuff, and there a lot of things are geared toward kids. High chairs, baby beds, baby seats, BB guns, toy soldiers, just toys. This is like a Slinky toy, but anyway, fun toys, fun things to have, fun things to get in there and buy. And bicycles, dolls, there's just everything. And that's part of the baby boom too, is the fact that you have so many things that are specifically designed for growing families. Disposable stuff is going to start to come about, disposable diapers, paper plates, napkins, that kind of thing, for our fast lifestyle. Okay, and the fact that we're buying it all. Women, after the war, they're going to be encouraged to quit their jobs and return home. Some do continue to work. Not all women are forced out of their jobs, but most men and women accept the idea that a woman's place is in the home. Y'all listen, that is traditional. It is what's always been, and it is not to say that almost every woman stayed home. Okay, by 1960, you have about 40% of women who work outside of the home. but just to say traditionally, more than half of the women did stay home, okay, because that was what was expected. I will also say that most women worked in traditionally held or jobs traditionally held by women: nursing, teaching, domestic servants, operators, secretaries, things like that, okay? And you see that really up until more modern times, okay? TV, which is a new thing at this point, is going to reinforce those gender roles. TV shows portrayed women as wives and mothers. I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver. Things like that. The woman was the stay-at-home caregiver, and she always on TV, these TV shows, she dressed up. She was wearing and made up every day, and it's the kind of thing of like being happy, vacuuming your house in heels. It's this crazy thing. But also, the mother, she stays at home. She's also the chief consumer. She's the one who goes out and buys their groceries and buys their stuff. And so that TV is also going to kind of, whereas it backs up those gender roles, it's also going to be putting out advertisements that she's going to see. Okay, and so kind of focusing on her when you see all of those ads. You also have the feminine mystique. Okay, The Feminine Mystique is a book published in the early 60s by Betty Friedan, and you don't really need to know much about this book except that it was written by Betty Friedan and the fact that it helped launch the modern women's rights movement. Okay, and really what this book did, she just pretty much said why she didn't like any of this traditional stuff. Women need to be working. Women do not need to be at home. Why are women getting married? I think one of probably my favorite quotes from her, and I say favorite, I'm not a big supporter of Betty Friedan or anything, but one of her quotes was, women need a man like fish need a bicycle. In other words, she was just this vast opposite of the traditional way. Why do we need men? We don't. So very much an early feminist. Okay, this just shows some of those women. Like I said, the whole idea of cleaning your house in your heels, cooking, and your traditional jobs here: operator, secretary, nurses, teachers too. But cleaning the house. And there's Betty Friedan. Okay, and we do have a post-World War II Red Scare. We had one in after World War I. Now this one's different, but it's similar. Both are similar. By the way, yeah, both are similar, so it's good. But you need to know the differences, okay? The Red Scare of the 50s was really due to the tough and very simplistic talk of the Truman administration. And so they kind of see this tension between the United States and the Soviet Union as good versus evil. It's either black or white. There is no gray area. You either support the Soviet Union or you support the United States. That was it. It's good guys versus bad guys. We're the good guys. Okay. The fall of China. The Soviets getting the bomb, and if I say getting, I mean their development of the atomic bomb, the Korean War, all of this made us kind of begin to question, how is this happening? Do we have enemies within the United States? Do we have Soviet sympathizers, Soviet spies within the United States? And so this is, of course, going to lead to McCarthyism. Now, one of the names associated with the first Red Scare in the 1920s was Palmer raids. In the 1950s, it's going to be Joseph McCarthy. He is a senator from Wisconsin, and he's a freshman senator. He's a new senator, and he is going to run across a list of names of people who are associated or outright communists. associated with communists or are communists. And this was a list that had been going around Washington for a few years. Nobody really paid much attention to it, but he is convinced that communists have infiltrated high levels of government and military. And he's going to take this list and he's going to go out there and he's going to begin accusing people. I think he's gotten a bad rap. Did he go too far? Yes. Did he do it the right way? Probably not. Were some of the names on his list communists or associated with communism? Yes, they were. And that's been proven with the Verona files and things like that. So I don't mean to imply that he's a good guy or a bad guy. I'm just saying he was not completely and totally wrong. I'm going to just end it at that. But his problem is going to be, and really his downfall is going to come about because of his accusations against the former Army Chief of Staff and Secretary of State George Marshall. And it's going to lead to televised hearings. And America is just going to be glued to the TV to watch these. But really what happens is he ends up looking like a nut. You know, he has a lot of support until those televised hearings, and he looks like a bully, and he's paranoid, and he ends up being discredited and loses everything, any kind of power that he had. Okay, here you have the Rosenbergs. They were actually a husband and wife who were accused and actually convicted of giving nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. There's McCarthy. You got the Red Iceberg. You got a lot of books, comics, and movies and things like that out during this time period. And then here is This Tomorrow, the Red Scare, and you can see just the fear that goes around. Okay. And finally, the last thing is talking about demographic changes. People moved a lot after World War II, and a major reason is going to be because of the jobs, specifically the war defense industry. They're just going to pop up these companies that provide the Army with stuff, weapons, and things like that are going to pop up around the country, and so people are just going to kind of go after those job opportunities, and so small towns are going to grow into large cities. You're going to begin to see minorities moving in large numbers from the south to the north in search of jobs, and the interstate highway, much like what we had seen the railroad do in an earlier time period, the interstate's going to aid this migration in this time period. Okay. All right, one last question. Okay, you already have your first question. The last question involves the baby boom. Now, the baby boom was mentioned across several different things, and what I want you to do is tell me, how did the baby boom affect specifically education and the consumer culture? Okay, specifically education and the consumer culture. So kind of go back and reread that if you need to, but think about the baby boom and its importance. Okay, and the same as yesterday. If there's anything I said or any questions that you have about what I said, please write that question down, and I'll try to have that answered for you tomorrow.